Notice how sometimes you're on the road to find out, and then sometimes you found out, then you're back on the road to finding out, and then you're found out again, and then you're back on the road, and then, right? That's life. So we can look at it as one big long road, right? Where we're constantly looking to find out, and then sometimes, you know, this experience where you feel found. I've arrived, I've got it, I've got the answers, I've achieved mystical oneness. And then something happens, right? And then that's the end of that. Back on the road. Back on the road. Brene Brown said you can either walk inside your story and own it, or stand outside your story and hustle for your worthiness. You can either walk inside your story and own it, or stand outside your story and hustle for your worthiness. The cool thing about standing up here and doing things like that, I should have organized before I got up here. But you're interested in what I got going on up here, aren't you? Plus, there's these little things that are just in the way. Get out of the way, little things. And Ernest Holmes says we should not be disturbed when things happen to us. Rather, we should use them as a lesson in our spiritual growth. Part of my brand is to be away from this thing and, you know, be animated and act, but sometimes I need things to come back to here. So I'm trying to, in my head during the course of the week, I'm trying to figure out, how do I be out here and do all of this, but then like do this too? So I'm trying to figure that out. Anyway, I thought today would be an appropriate opportunity for us to review. Who's familiar with the 4 kingdoms of consciousness or any of that work before? Done some of that work. To review the kingdoms or the expressions of consciousness. They're called the kingdoms or the expressions of consciousness, and how each one of us can find ourselves in any one of those kingdoms or expressions of consciousness at any point in our lives during the course of a day. And it is a road that we travel as well. One long continuum of discovery, of unfolding, of the path of becoming. But consider this when we think that we've arrived anywhere, and it feels good to have arrived someplace. You know what I mean? Like, as a dad, I think sometimes I check that dad box pretty hard. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I'm a dad. I'm checking that box, you know? Like, I've got it all in order. I'm being a dad. I'm dadding in the best way, and then next thing you know, something happens, and I'm the worst dad in the world. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's an expression of the kingdoms of consciousness. I go from mystical oneness to a total victim in about 30 seconds. You understand, right? You ever do this in life? Yes, you do. I'm a church professional. I only stand up here and talk about things I've got authority on, so I already know. And how we flow in and out of these things. Really, this talk is designed for each one of us to have a greater experience of grace with ourselves. A greater experience of acceptance. A greater experience of self-love, which I think is so much a part of my ministry anyway. The message that I seek to deliver. It's been a difficult road for me, that whole thing of self-love. That whole thing of standing inside of my story and owning my space and knowing that my path is valid. That my path, my particular walk is worthy. That I, just like you, get to have a story that includes fatherhood, that includes being a good dad, that includes being a bad dad, stuff that I can't take back, stuff that I've done before that I seek to make amends over, but what's done is done. And what I can do now is become a fuller, richer, more gloriously expressed heart of love and forgiveness. That's what I desire for each one of us, because we all have a story. We all have a history. We all have those things that make us who we are, and some of them we're very proud of, and some we don't feel particularly graceful about. We wish maybe we've made a different choice, but that's life, isn't it? And how many times can we look back and say, oh, I really did play the victim role real well there? Or, wow, that experience of that feeling of knowing that the Spirit is my life and being in lockstep and being in that flow, and no matter what happens to me on that particular day or in that particular season in my life, I felt grace-filled and filled with forgiveness, and it didn't matter how the world presented itself to me. I was a generative presence of love, a generative presence of beauty, a generative presence of forgiveness and allowing and being and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So as we review these expressions of consciousness, consider that each of us find ourselves in these things perhaps on a daily basis. And most of them, I can look back in my life and say, oh, for the most part, there are times when I still revel in the victim role. I've shared that with you before. Sometimes that dramatic part of me feels good, feeling like a victim for a little bit of time, and then I have to remember, oh, I'm in charge of my own consciousness, and this doesn't feel particularly good. So we start with the first, just imagine this like, who remembers biology? Was it in biology that we did Punnett squares? Remember Punnett squares? They're like X's and Y's or X or something like that. I don't even remember what the result of them was. But you have 4 squares, right? And then you kind of combine different things. Anyway, that's like the kingdoms of consciousness. You've got a box, a big box, and then within that big box, you have 4 boxes. I don't know why I'm thinking of Punnett squares. That just occurred to me. I haven't thought of that in decades. Isn't that wild how the brain works? Just access that file. But you think of a big box, and then within that box, there are 4 smaller boxes. And so within each box, you can see like an expression of consciousness. One is the to-me consciousness, that life is happening to me, and there's nothing I can do about it. Anybody familiar? From time to time, life is happening to me, and there's nothing I can do about it. Consider when you might be in those times. Now, if we look at over the course of the entire road, I would say more often now, I'm not in the victim consciousness. I'm not in that life is happening to me. I've got some tools, right? Oh, if I can, Ernest Holmes, one of the fundamental sayings that he came up with, one of the fundamental insights into truth was that if I change my thinking, I can change my life. Let's say it together. Change my thinking, change my life. That if I can change my thinking, I can change my life, that I actually have some dominion over it. William James said, see, I got to get over here and do this. The great William James was a theologian, and, you know, back in the day, I like to refer to back in the day, I notice, even though Brene Brown's a contemporary. But it was the time of such great discovery of mind. It was such a time of the late 1800s, early 1900s, was such a time of extraordinary discovery about our spiritual nature, and a time of extraordinary discovery about who we really are in our relationship to life, capital L. That there wasn't some spirit, some presence, the whole consciousness of humanity had been hoodwinked for thousands of years by this whole idea of God is someplace other than where you are, and ideas of supplication and begging and, oh, I have to be a good boy or a good girl in order to get the good things in life, rather than realizing that the Spirit is right where I am. And even growing up in this philosophy, this perennial philosophy, even growing up in science of mind and being exposed to it and going to church camps and other things, I was still exposed to the other ideas, and there was still a refinement process, you see, of principle meeting the world, and how sometimes the consciousness of the world, sometimes being asleep is a really powerful force, it feels like. When I'm attempting to be awake in the midst of what seems like millions and billions of people being asleep to their true divine nature, and then the actions that come out of that, how we harm each other and how we hurt each other. What's it said, that old saying or whatever it came from? That hurt people hurt people, and awake people serve people. And that's what we're seeking to to be. So William James said, the greatest discovery of my generation is that a human being can alter their life by altering their attitude. And do you know that you have dominion over your attitude, do you? Yeah, we want to, like, sometimes, truth be told, more often than not, I'm aware of it, and sometimes I forget. That's why the spiritual path is so much a process of remembering. So much a process of recalling what we really are. That I actually have some dominion over my attitude. That if I change my thinking, I can change my life. Oh, but sometimes we're so entrenched, right? And sometimes it feels momentarily better to be right than to be healed. We know that. But then we want to get back on course, get back on track. And when you know something, you can't unknow it. When you learn something, you can't unlearn it. That love is more powerful than hate, we know this by now. And that actually hate is just the absence of something, the absence of this profound love. It's an ignorance. But once we learned 2 + 2 = 4, was anybody going to 2 + 3 = 4? We don't practice that, do we? No. We practice 2 + 2 = 4. We practice that love plus forgiveness equals a healed world, equals a greater beauty, equals a greater love. So sometimes we're in that victim consciousness of life happening to me. And then we start to wake up and realize that, oh, there's something I can do about it. And then we realize that our will, by changing our thinking and changing our life, that we can use our will to actually create a life that we want. Our willpower. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to head in this direction. I realize that I can change my thinking and change my life, and therefore, go Charles. This is the realm of a lot of ego. And there's nothing wrong with it, right? Be clear, there's nothing wrong with any of this stuff. It's just an awareness. It's a context. That's all. And if I'm aware that I'm in victim, I would like to get to some ego. Oh, I don't have to just take this. I'm not a doormat. I can actually cause my life. That's the second kingdom. That's not the sign of the cross. That's the Punnett square box. But bless you anyway, people. But bless you anyway, right? So that there's actually something I can do about my life. So that's encouraging. So consider it. Over the course of the week, you're in, oh man, life's happening to me. You get a phone call, right? Or you're on the phone with the airline and you want to change a plane ticket, but they're like, you bought a saver fare. You can't change it. You have to pay the full rate. And then that's what I do. I just go into, like, the air industry is against me, right? That's where I go. They're not, though. I turn myself against myself. Like, they've got their rules and reservations, blah, 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 right? So then I got to get my attitude right, says William James. That's just the way it is. Maybe next time I'll use some more ego or some will and decide to spend 50 extra bucks and get the economy fare so I can change it. I'm trying to be practical here, gang. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to be very practical. Perhaps when we're in our relationships and we feel like we're being treated badly and there's nothing we can do about it, that it's just coming our way, that there's actually something we can do about it. We can stand up for ourselves. That we can actually indicate to the world how we deserve to be treated. That's an effect of the will. We can use our voice to affect change. And then we start to move into a little bit more of a surrendered place. You know this place. It's victim is life's happening to me, and then the will is life's happening by me. And then we get into more of a place of surrender where life is happening through me. Surrender and flow. Where I'm actually in times, and I can realize, reflect on this about my life as well, that there are times when I'm more deeply rooted and steeped in my spiritual practice, where I realize that there's a power and a presence that's actually flowing through me. Life is happening through me. Jesus said, I can of my own self do nothing. It is the Father within. That's how he said it back in the day. It's the Father that dwelleth within me that does the work. That I of my own self can do nothing. It is the power and the presence in today's, how we would say it today, that does the work inside of me. That it wasn't Jesus walking around doing the miracles. There was something moving through him, a power and a presence. Because of our own humanity, we're clumsy, right? We can get into victim mode. Jesus was even in victim mode at one point. You know, when Jesus went out to the desert, you guys know this is my upbringing, right? Catholicism, so I, you know, the stories and all that kind of stuff. That's why I revert. I like the stories. You know, I've learned to recycle them and metabolize them in a particular way such that they serve. They're not, I need to go through Jesus as my Lord and personal Savior. Jesus is the way shower for how we could all possibly live, right? And so there was a time when Jesus was in victim mode too, where he was out in the desert. We talked about this in class a little bit on Tuesday night. Jesus went out in the desert and he was in deep darkness and doubt. Deep faith crisis. This is before he knew what was about to come down, right? He was like, he knew he was going to be sacrificed and, you know, like the whole thing was about to happen, and he goes out to the desert, and who shows up? Anybody know? This isn't Bible class, but I'm just kind of checking it out. Who? Satan. Satan shows up, right? So if Satan shows up, I'm in victim consciousness. Imagine that for a moment. Even Jesus was in victim consciousness. A little bit later too, that even Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane said, hey, if I don't have, take this cup from me. If I don't have to go through with this, then, you know, I don't want to do it. But then what happened? Jesus eventually gets to a more surrendered place. I of myself do nothing. It's the presence within me that does it. What if I wake up? What if each of us wake up every morning and we say, oh, my life today, I of myself do nothing, but it is the Spirit that moves within me that does it all. And what is the Spirit? What do we know about the Spirit? The Spirit is what? The Spirit is love and expression. The Spirit is harmonious. The Spirit is alive with love. The Spirit is dignified. The Spirit is whole. The Spirit is forgiveness. The Spirit has no problems. And the Spirit is where? Right where you are. Right where I am. Right where we are. And it's been said that this way of understanding life takes a tremendous amount of personal responsibility, because you realize that when you're in victim mode, you put yourself into victim mode. And that there's something you can do to get out of victim mode. And so we have to take responsibility for ourselves. But again, there will be times when I'm in victim. There's times when I feel like life is happening to me. Then there'll be times when I feel like my willpower, life's not happening to me. I can do this. I can do it. I can go crush this interview. I can go manifest this money. I can go do this thing. And then we start to realize that, oh, I get a little tired. There's a lot of ego involved when I'm making my life happen, when I'm willing my life into existence. And we have a certain paradigm that most of us live within. And that's the extent through which we can perceive life. So if we're saying, I want to experience more, we want to continue down the road, then there must be a willingness to lay down some of that purposeful ego. The ego is good. It's not bad. It's not here trying to kill you. It's not doing that. It's here to protect you, and it's part of your identity, and it's all a blessed and good thing. And then we start to say, oh, what if there's a more grace-filled way that I can move through my life? And then we start to wake up in the morning and through our practice say, as Jesus did, it's not me that does the work. There's a power and a presence that moves through me. And if I allow that to be, there's a little more love presented as my life, more forgiveness, more harmony, more joy, more benefit of the doubt. Are you all with me? Yeah? See, and that's the third box. And then we get into that mystical experience, which I know we've all had as well. And that's where life, capital L, is happening as me. Meister Eckhart said, the eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me. The eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me. We could take that quote and that could become a lifetime of practice. A lifetime of practice. Life happening as me. As. Now, there's a kinship between through me and as me, yes? Life happening through me and life happening as me. When we get into that space, we realize that I am love. I am forgiveness. I am the Spirit expressed. I am. As a statement of the name of life itself, I am. It's one of the simplest, most profound names for God that we have is I am. When the Spirit showed up at the burning bush, it said, when Moses asked, well, what is your name? Who should I tell them sent me? Tell them, I am that I am. I am that I am. So what are we reviewing here? What are we looking at? We're looking at ways to accept ourselves. Now, does living in life happening through me or life happening as me, does that sound sexier to me than life being a victim of life? 100%. 100%. Would I rather live in the space of all is well? Cut me off. I welcome it. I welcome you to cut me off in traffic. Yes. Yes, I welcome. I don't care. I'm untouched by the names you might call me or what you might think about who I am. I know who I am. It's the Spirit that dwelleth within me. This is tremendous. It might even seem like blasphemous to our own consciousness. Is blasphemous a word? I don't know. Blasphemy. Why am I trying to sound smart now? See? There's my ego getting involved. Trying to sound smart. What was I saying? Blasphemous. Oh, it might sound like blasphemy, blasphemous to our own consciousness when we start to say that I am the presence and power and the love of God. But you see, even when Jesus said it's the Father within me that doeth the work, there's a surrendering. It's the presence and power and love that's within me that does it. And so again, I know I talk about it so often, but this is where our spiritual practice is so necessary, gang. This is why our daily prayer and our daily meditation is so important. It's so important. It's why having a prayer partner is so important. So we can remind each other of what's so and what's true about life. It's why to be involved in communities like this is so important. It's why involved in any life-giving endeavor, taking classes, having a practitioner, all types of things are so important to keep our mind and our heart right. Even so I can be aware that if I'm in the victim, it's temporary. If I'm experiencing victimhood, it's temporary. And if I'm experiencing that mystical connection, that is temporary as well. But the context is that there was a life and a power and a presence and a love that is who we are, that is being itself as our very expression, and that we want to continue to come back as much as possible to that truth. So there's times when we're a victim, life's happening to us. There's a time when life's happening by us, when we move from that victim consciousness to life happening by me, willpower. Then there's that time when life's happening through us, where we realize, oh, the word I would associate here is grace. And then there's a time when we experience that mystical oneness where our humanity blends right in with the spiritual world, and we perceive that through our times of prayer and meditation. We perceive that. It's why so many mystics, when the true mystics move themselves away. Here's the thing is about being a mystic right in the middle of life. I could see how it'd be a lot easier to be a mystic from the monastery, right? There's the monastery mystic. And then there's the right in the middle of life mystic. One's not bad, and one's not right, and one's not wrong. But what I'm interested in for each one of us is to become that modern day, right in the middle of life mystic. Right in the middle of life that we're practicing, knowing that the presence and power and love of God is right where I am. And then, as Ernest Holmes said, these thoughts that we might have that are otherness, they begin to dissolve because thought by thought, bit by bit, I can dismantle the destructiveness of a thought other than what's divine and welcome the power and the presence and the love of the Spirit as my life, and watch as I dissolve from all of these problems and rise into an awareness of the Almighty and the All-Good happening as my life. And what comes along with this? A tremendous amount of humility. a humble servant for the heart of the Spirit. And then we transform the environment in which we live. And then we look out and we see more smiling faces, more people serving each other, more people celebrating however we show up in life. Black, white, red, green, man, woman, they, their, other, whatever it shows up as. And it's evolving as we evolve. But we have a heart that's wide open enough that says, I accept all of it. And if it's not working for me, then I can dismantle thought by thought what the problem is and get to a spiritual solution. So simply be aware this week. I encourage you to be aware over the course of the week, just where you are. You know, Yoda even said when he was training Luke in the swamp, he said, very rarely has somebody ever been aware of where they actually are and what they are doing in the moment. So it's encouraging us to be aware of where am I in the moment and what am I doing? And am I entertaining a false idea of life, or am I welcoming the truth about life? And I know I'm entertaining a false idea about life if I'm berating myself, if I'm breaking myself down, if I'm feeling less than, not enough, unworthy. And then we can take what Brene Brown says and stand right in the middle of our story, claim it, and we don't have to hustle for our worthiness. We just stand in the midst of our worthiness. Yes? Amen. That's what I've got to share with you this morning.